Hey, good day. This is Greg Lewis, City Manager here in Lebanon, New Hampshire. It's a wonderful day today. This is, last time I talked to you, it was the first day of spring. It wasn't so wonderful. We had snow and everything. Today it's sun shining in Lebanon, and I think people's spirits get brightened up. Mine do. As soon as we get some light on the subject and we can enjoy being outside. I think everybody wants to get outdoors, and enough of this inside. Today I'm very pleased that we're going to kind of showcase a couple aspects of Lebanon, because in order to meet the public needs of Lebanon, our community needs, it's so tough these days because resources are basically become really skinny, and from all levels, federal, state, and locally it's challenging with the way New Hampshire is set up. We must partner and collaborate with persons in the private sector, and in particular our nonprofits, and in particular our charitable efforts. And so today the first issue we want to bring to you is I had the pleasure of going to visit, as I do, one of our local organizations. It's Good Beginnings of Lebanon, and I have their executive director here, and Denise Dame. And Denise, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Greg. Appreciate it.
I really enjoyed visiting with you, and I'm anxious to share through you what Good Beginnings of Lebanon is about. But first, could you share with our community members how you came to the position you are today? And just kind of, I always like to follow people's lives a little bit about how they get where they end up.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's an interesting story. I was a mother of 3 young children, and I decided that I didn't want to be a stay-at-home mom full-time anymore, that I wanted to do something a little bit more stimulating outside of the home. And I saw an ad in the paper for the coordinator of volunteers for Good Beginnings about 11 years ago,
oh, wow, good.
Which I applied for and met with the director at the time, who was Pat Martin. And she and I hit it off right away, and it seemed I was a good match for the organization. So she offered me the position, and 11 years ago I started, and I'm still there today in a different capacity.
Well, that's a great service to the community. When I walked over into the Good Beginnings, and I went in and I thought, oh my goodness, look at all these things that are in the room. It was, of course, we raised 3 children. And it's hard for me to recall that all of them they were in their babies, but I looked around the room and saw all these interesting things. That remembering going to parenting classes, how much pressure we were under when they had babies, and and so when I came into your office, and I just had a feeling of well-being and warmth of being surrounded by all the objects and things you had. So what's Good Beginnings about?
So Good Beginnings started about 28 years ago by a small group of women in Hanover, New Hampshire, and since then it's expanded to a board of about 16 people and staff of 4 part-time staff, and we provide in-home support to families that have new babies. And so any family with a new baby can qualify for services. And what we do is we match that family up with a trained volunteer who visits the family once a week for about 2 to 3 hours, and she just pitches in and helps out in any way that she can. Sometimes it's, here, let me hold the baby so you can go and pay the bills and get a shower and just relax.
I think that would be so rewarding for the people that were being helped and the people who were helping. It's kind of a wonderful two-way,
it's
kind
a win-win
nice
situation.
Yeah.
It really is. And I know you understand the challenges of parenting, even though it was a few years ago. You do remember. I can
remember in my mind. I can see that now, trying to struggle with circumstances with every child's different.
Every child's different, and you think it's going to get, the second child is going to bring twice as much work, when it actually, in fact, brings much more than twice as much work when you have a second child.
It really is a multiplier,
isn't it? Right? So our volunteers are absolutely thrilled to help out, and they remember. Many of them are moms themselves, some are grandmoms, and they just know how valuable the support is.
Yes. Now, first, I guess there's not so many questions, but one question is, how do the parents, how do they get connected with Good Beginnings? I mean, how do they end up in a situation where they can access the services that you offer?
Well, there are a variety of ways, and two of the most popular avenues to get connected are through the birthing centers in the area. Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center has a connection to us, and also Alice Peck Day Memorial Hospital has a connection to us. And also another big resource is families who have already used Good Beginnings. They're great advocates for support, and they encourage other new parents to reach out for our help.
That's nice. So there's a lot of, there's different connections your organization have established over the years.
Yes.
Where you know, to help facilitate people when they're thinking about how to go into the situation of parenthood, and they're at that stages of that, and they could have a path that they can choose to pursue.
Right.
And plus, you have your advocates from alumni who have been in
very
participating.
Very strong advocates.
I'm sure that must build the good feelings on their part about, oh, I went through this experience, I'd like to share a good experience, because I think most of us like to share
a good experience, and also they understand, having become parents already, how challenging it might be, even if you don't think it's going to be challenging. You're definitely going to be exhausted. That's a given.
Yes.
And who couldn't use a little extra help in a household with children?
Sounds like there's a lot of flexibility in the volunteer helpers or mentors when they come into the home. It's not like they just kind of look and assess kind of the need, and it's a very human relationship coming in there. It's not like regimented or anything. It's just, hey, look what I found. You look at what I found right there.
Would you like me to fold that laundry while you're holding the baby? Or
a variety of different things.
Very flexible and very understanding, and also very encouraging and compassionate about the challenges of parenthood.
Yeah,
it's not easy.
One of the things about people trying to perform any kind of task today, of any sort, parenting and other types of tasks, that I have really come to believe strongly in, is that the way in which to be supportive and be something to strengthen approaches to tasks is to have that immediate, in the moment feedback to people, and not to stand aloof or say or delay that feedback to a later point in time. Well, I observed this, now I say this, but no, immediately engage, and that's what the way in which to assist and support tasks.
You're absolutely right about that, Greg. The volunteers are very, as you pointed out, flexible, but they're also just very compassionate human beings, and they understand that a simple word of encouragement, you really are doing a great job as a new mom, or you really are doing the right thing as a new dad. It's just very affirming. And your baby probably isn't going to tell you that for a really long time. Yes. So it's nice to hear that from someone.
Yeah, it would be really nice. Now, how do people become volunteers? How do they become these volunteers that are engaged in that? And how do they get into that?
Of course, another answer that's similar to my one about how families engage, that we've been in the community for a number of years, and volunteers who have been volunteering for a long time say to their friends and their neighbors and their coworkers, have you ever thought about being a Good Beginnings volunteer? And we also advertise, and we have posters in the community at different locations, churches, general stores, community centers, and we have a website where people can also go and get information about volunteering. And there's information on there about parenting, and there are other resources too.
So don't forget, what's your website? I think what we'll do is we'll send the website over to our show here, and then we'll put it up when we're talking so people can see it on the screen.
That sounds great. Yeah, it's really easy. If you just key in Good Beginnings, you'll see a few different options, because there are a few of us.
That's great. That's great. Now, when they come on board and they say, I'd like to become a volunteer, what happens with regard to those people who step up to the plate and decide to try to do this?
So as you can imagine, there is a process, and we have an application that they fill out. They have to have a personal interview. We ask for 3 personal references, and we do criminal background checks on all of our volunteers. And then they go through an orientation, and we offer monthly follow-up meetings so that they can continue their education. We work with the Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center's CHAD hospital, we have a pediatric resident come to our meetings once a month and share a topic of interest, either about immunizations, about bottle feeding versus breastfeeding. So there are all kinds of ways that they have continued education.
Well, that is really, really wonderful. Now, this is tough times for nonprofits and trying to, try to maintain our services and maintain these services we have in our community. How does Good Beginnings enable to support its organizational functions?
Well, there are a variety of ways, as you can imagine. We do write grants to different foundations requesting support. We have a loyal donor base, and they've been very generous over the years, and they continue to be. Many of the recipients of services feel very strongly about giving back, and they receive free services when they have their new babies, and then later on down the road, when they're able to, they give back to the organization, either monetarily, or they volunteer, or they donate gently used baby items to the organization. So it really is we survive based on reciprocity. Today's recipients are tomorrow's donors, and we just help each other out.
Yeah, it's very circle-like.
It's very circle-like. Yeah.
That's really wonderful. In terms of our prospects, are we facing challenges with the Good Beginnings for the future? Are there opportunities for Good Beginnings that we might be also looking for? What do you see in terms of the future of Good Beginnings?
I see it continuing to grow just because the need continues to be there. One other thing I would point out is that we could not possibly operate without having collaborative partners in the community. We work with a lot of other Upper Valley nonprofits that help provide different services to the families that need different services than what we can provide. So we certainly work in collaboration with other nonprofits as well. And I do see it growing. I don't see childbirth ending anytime soon. I don't see families stopping their desire for families. I mean, I think it's such a wonderful program, and I'm so thankful when you contacted me and let me know about Good Beginnings, and then we had the chance to get together and be at your place. How can, so you mentioned a number of avenues in which people could be helpful and supportive. Maybe we should go back and summarize. We have a few minutes left in our segment. Sure.
Of how people can get involved to be supportive of, and so make sure we covered our bases. Right.
There are a variety of ways. Actually, we're launching our annual campaign as we speak, actually.
Oh, very good.
So we will be sending out our solicitations, but also people who are interested in volunteering can either call the office directly or go to the website. People who are interested in donating can go to the website or write a check and stick it in the mail, give us a call. We can take a credit card over the phone. And families who are interested in receiving services, of course, can call anytime or send an email and get connected with us.
That's really marvelous. Everyone that's listening, I encourage you to become involved. Take this as another example. There's so many opportunities for involvement in the community, and we each of us decide and make choices. But Good Beginnings has been very impressive, and I think that one of my things I think about. Sometimes as city manager, I encounter difficult situations.
I can imagine.
And what I try to do, some person in some session I had up in the woods said that I should perceive people as babies.
Interesting.
That instead of seeing people as they are today, because each of us, all of us have gone through a lot in our lives as we get older and we've experienced a lot. But remember that we're all begin as babies. And what Good Beginnings is doing, they're good beginnings. That word Good Beginnings is because that's where the baby is. The baby, when we start out, we don't start out with some of these things that we end up with. And so if we have a good start, a good beginning with our babies, that's very critical. And I think there's all kinds of things going on. There's, Denise, about babies and the good experience if we get good beginnings for the babies with their mothers and the babies.
Want a good connection early on and have a good foundation so that you can grow and your brain can develop appropriately and that you can carry on and become a productive member of society and do well in school.
So when we hope that you appreciate today. I really thank Denise, and I thank her organization. I thank all their volunteers, and I thank those who have chosen to participate as parents. That's really wonderful that they have made a choice like that. I encourage people to make choices where you don't have to feel alone in this world. We should be supportive of one another, and try. Anyone that can do anything to help good beginnings, please do so. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg.
I appreciate your time today, Denise.
Nice to see you again.
Good luck on the fund drive. Everyone should take that hint. There's an opportunity to give.
Thank you very much, Greg.
Hi again. This is Greg Lewis, your city manager. Our next area of we're going to inquire into is our United Way. In this case, Granite State United Way, and I have Suzanne Stoffett, interim president. Is it right, president? Is it president or executive director?
Well, actually, I
interim vice president. You have so many titles.
I have a brand new title.
Do you have a new title? What's your latest title, Suzanne?
My latest title is Senior Director of Regional Impact.
Senior Director of Regional Impact. we have been on some panels together, and we've had a chance to just sit and just have a good personal visit too. So we kind of have some common ground in things that we think about and try to explore. And so we have known each other for a little while we've been here, both being here, and it's been good getting to know Suzanne. I'm a United Way supporter, of course. Have been all my life, and it's usually through my employer. And I thought it would be very valuable to us as the theme of our community is to collaborate together, look at things both regionally and locally, but we know that we don't have enough resources to go around if we just relied on the public resources. So we have to rely on a combination of effort from the private for-profit area, from the private for nonprofit, and United Way has their I guess linkages in all those fields with all those sectors that we have. And Suzanne, could you share with the viewers today from our community a little bit about your background and how you are in your present role?
Sure. I've been helping nonprofit organizations for more than 30 years here in the Upper Valley, and when I was preparing for this interview, I looked back. Most of the time I've been consultant with a few roles as an employee, but it warmed my heart to remember just how many Lebanon organizations that I've helped over those 30 years. For instance, I was the first development director and marketing director at Alice Peck Day Hospital. I worked a little bit helped Benta at Ava Gallery a little bit, and I had an office upstairs in the Ava Gallery for several years. I did quite a bit of consulting for Lebanon College and helped them with their first endowment campaign many years ago when Jan Chapman was the president. And then when they built the new CCB, of course, they had the funds to build the building, but I helped raise the money to furnish the Carter Community Building. And I worked with Carol Dustin at the Grafton County Senior Center, helped with Hannah House in the beginning, Headrest, and then for those of you old timers, I helped with UDS, the United Developmental Services, when that was here in Lebanon. So I live in Norwich, but Lebanon is like a second home to me.
That's nice. Well, we're pleased to have you here with us today. We're pleased to have the United Way here. And I know today our object is we want to do a number of things. We want to kind of bring people up to speed about the current activities of the United Way within Upper Valley, but in particular within Lebanon, and how the operations are going for United Way.
Well, we've just come off a very successful campaign, and I just really need to thank everybody out there who's watching, who may have helped us by contributing your dollars. All those donations put together give us a large pot of money to work with to better the lives of your neighbors. So first of all, thank you for that.
That's terrific.
Yep. And right now we're absolutely in the middle of trying to figure out how to give that money away. Actually, literally as we speak, our grant review teams are meeting, and they very carefully, it's all volunteer based, all volunteers, it's only your community neighbors who make the decisions of where to give the money, and they review the grant applications, and they meet with the organizations who apply, and then they sharpen their pencils and decide how to distribute the funds, which are never quite equal to the amount of requests.
There's a very large demand and need for services and supports for some very good causes out there. It must be a tough job to be on a grant review team for United Way.
It is tough, but it's very rewarding. And we have this year there's 20 volunteers from the community. Well, actually more, because before these volunteers get to work, we have a committee of about 8 volunteers, which goes over all of the financial information of each grant application to make sure it's good to go and that all the numbers add up, basically. Then it goes to the grant review committee, and they do the rest of the work of the content and interviewing. This year there's 37 different organizations applied for 51 different programs.
Wow, wow. That's and I suppose the diversity among those programs is pretty wide.
It is. We divide them into 3 categories: income, education, and health. So there's 3 grant review teams that work on that. But yeah, it's huge. But everything points toward making the quality of life better for people in the Upper Valley.
And the United Way's operations is so I get the impressions it's a cyclical type of operation where there's certain times here, certain things are happening.
Yes.
Something is happening, then it goes around. There's probably, it's kind of like plan, do, evaluate,
Yes.
go back around
Yes.
again.
Big cycles and circles.
Over there.
So.
Are the activities today, are we seeing changes? And I mean, I've been trying to in the city try to look at a 3-year pilot,
Yeah.
where we try to take 3 years, which are beginning the first year this year, 2014, and 15 and 16, and see what types of things might produce outcomes that will move the city toward the achievement of the master plan
Yes.
that was adopted by the city through the planning board and the city council, and developed by a countless number of citizens engaged in committees and participations and public forums. And that is a 2030 plan, so it is trying to, it's tough to plan 30, out to 2030 in the environment we live in. And so we're trying to pick the 3-year window of saying, let's see what we could do. We'll try to pilot some things that we have some basics we got to do all the time, which are generally infrastructure, public safety, and then we have to make sure the financial house is in order. And all that has a lot of it that's how well we plan, how well we communicate, how well we perform and how well we listen, and how much and more involvement do we have from citizens. How is United Way facing these turbulent times in terms of its planning approach?
Well, I could just easily say it's the same. We're thinking of moving. It's very important to everybody at United Way, all the staff. It is not our money. This money comes from the community, and it needs to go back into the community, and we need to be scrupulous in the way it gets distributed. And that's why it's never staff that makes any kind of decisions on that. We're just there to support the volunteers who make the decisions. One of the things we're working toward is having you were talking about a 3-year cycle. We're
Yes.
thinking about moving to a 3-year cycle for our grants. This would help the nonprofits because they would only have to apply once every 3 years instead of every year, and that would be, I mean, they would be responsible for supplying us data so that we could judge whether they are achieving the goals that they've told us they want to achieve.
I think it's interesting. That's the same. One of our rationales about the 3 was to do that as well, because most of the things that we're trying to affect and influence they aren't the kind of things this is a short-term fix. It's been historically in our world, it's been a long time coming to where we're at today,
Yeah.
and it's a long time going to the future. And so if we're going to influence to a positive direction, say engaging citizens, the idea of total citizen involvement, such as you're talking about having them on the grant teams, that they're really, I think you and I, in our way we're trying to approach this as we represent people like us, is not that we'd like to have the community in which we serve to become the definitional thing for what the outcomes are.
Yeah, definitely.
What are the policies, the guides seeking to obtain those outcomes? And then making the judgment whether those outcomes were achieved.
Yes.
And if they're not achieved, then making a judgment as to the corrective action, or whether we're just leaning against the wrong wall and we need to go find a different wall to work on. And then we become we should facilitate, support, listen, communicate, engage. We should share information back. And that by that process we could maybe be supportive of a community becoming united. Because I always think of United Way. What's United Way about? It's being united, and that stands for itself. But it's something United Way is like it's got a brand, but really it's about united, and it's about a way of going forward and pulling together and not pulling apart. And not being the opposite of united would be divided. I mean, and we see so much divided systems where the system gets divided and dysfunctional, and we don't. That's not productive for the people that live in this situation. So we need being united and pulling together and finding a way that we could reach a consensus that we could live with pursuing this way.
Yes.
There's no perfect way. We're not seeking perfection. We're seeking, we seeking to an area that the end I can live with. That these are reasonable results based on the resources provided, and that they serve the purposes for which they are intended. And that's, that kind of, it seems so simple, and yet it gets so complicated so fast.
Well, we're human.
And complex.
We're human, and if there's a way to complicate something, we'll
do it.
We'll do it.
But that's really ironic that we can do that.
It's good to step back and take a look at that.
So what's the future?
Okay, one of the things, in the last year or two, we collaborated with APD and Mount Ascutney Hospital and Mary Hitchcock, Dartmouth Hitchcock, and we performed a community needs assessment. And the outcome, and anybody who would like a copy can get one from my office. The results were not startling in that there were 12 identified areas that we all know there's need. But there was one startling piece of data that came out, and that was that informed stakeholders, that is people in the professional service delivery area, overwhelmingly said that the most left behind group of people in the community were the low-income wage earners and their families. That that was the group that keeps getting left falling in the crack. And so our local Upper Valley Community Impact Committee has decided to address that situation, that need, that lack. And so all of our grant making and some special initiatives going forward are going to be looking at that population.
I think that's a really great conclusion, because I mean, that has been you look at, I just think the sense of people is that as the distance has grown between the economic well-being to such a distance between the very well-off and those who are not well-off, those who were perhaps, I always thought, the heart and soul of America. Yeah. Where not necessarily that they have a great deal of money, but they had sufficient resources to meet the needs that to raise their family, to be themselves, and to seek what they thought with their life should be about. And that is harder now than ever. And so they're moving closer to a challenge situation where, by reasons of a whole lot of different things, you may be in really a deprived situation in terms of sufficient resources. And moving in there, and that there's not these programs, there's not these things to help.
That's right.
So I'm very happy to hear that. That's a great thing. Yeah. As we close in our last minute or so, for those of us who already are helping United Way, is there something more that can be done for those who haven't, decided yet to look at the United Way as an opportunity? What are the opportunities? How can people get involved with United Way?
Oh, there are many volunteer opportunities. We're always looking for help, whether it's grant review or fundraising, or we have different events throughout the year. We have the Day of Caring. If you just want to try out volunteering one day a year, we have this giant volunteer opportunity. And call me.
All right. Well, there's so many things to be proud of in Lebanon, and one of them is that we have our United Way organization here in Lebanon, serving the region, but also serving us in Lebanon, and many Lebanon organizations being helped by the United Way. So if anything you could do out there to support United Way, and we have the contact available for you, so please do look into it and avail yourself of a great opportunity to be part of the United Way movement. Thank you so much today, and I thank you, Suzanne, for being here. It's a great pleasure as always. And,
same here.
And best wishes. And,
thank you.
The new impact approach.
Yes.
I dearly love that and support that.
Thank you.
Good night, and have a really decent, now that we got some weather, right, spring here finally. Thanks.